My name is Brad Muniz, and I'd like to welcome you to Sobel Insights. Sobel Insights is a weekly series where we provide some brief information on various topics. Our goal today is to keep the sessions to 15 minutes. At this time, we are not offering CPE. If you have any ideas for topics or presenters, please feel free to reach out to me. Our topic today is trademarks. Our speaker today is Danielle DeFilippis. She's with Norris McLaughlin. She is a member at the firm and a co-chair of the Intellectual Property Group. Intellectual property, it's a lot of stuff going on to intellectual property, Danielle. People are sitting around, I think, with nothing else to do and just coming up with ideas. So I can imagine trademarks, and particularly in a lot of industries, need assistance. And how do you how is your focus in helping these companies, particularly the food and beverage industry, where I know you have a real passion for?
Sure. Thank you. Yes. And thank you for having me. I'm really happy to talk about this topic today. And yeah, it is interesting because, as everyone knows, the last year and a half has been, you've seen a lot of change, and in the food industry, particularly because they've had to shift and evolve and adapt in light of the pandemic. And I like to think people are hoping to protect their brand and worrying about protecting their brand. But yeah, it is remarkable. There has been quite a bit of movement in the space, a lot of new trademarks being filed. And I think the time is ripe really to go back to the basics a little bit here and say, okay, so why are trademarks important? What should we be thinking about? Because as you say, people are thinking, okay, maybe this is the time to start my side brand, or I have a little bit more time at home. I'm going to tackle that side project. Let me come up with a name for it. So, we can help, guide that. So for me, as you mentioned, I work primarily with trademark intellectual property matters, trademarks, and if the need arises, litigation. I work with a variety of different clients, from small to emerging brands to larger brands, and through all phases of growth. So branding and trademark issues arise throughout various stages as product lines start and as they develop and emerge. And for me, how I started with food and beverage, really focusing on food and beverage, it's always been a big part of my life. My father serviced the food industry, working with food manufacturers his entire career through his work through a sales and marketing company. So I learned about marketing, branding, and food distribution from a retail and manufacturing perspective. So now I enjoy working with food brands on brand development, clearance, counseling through various stages of growth. I became passionate about the industry over time and tracking its evolution and trends, and following these branding issues that tend to arise.
And I guess it's a staple of everybody's life of food and beverage. So it would be something that it's easy for you to talk to. A lot of our staff work on certain clients, and I say they like that client because it's tangible and it's not really touchable. But people see food and beverage, they understand when you talk with them more about it. But as you said, you deal with a lot of intellectual property for all different types. And the important thing is that you said in that one sentence, I picked up on a lot. I picked up quickly on small to large. So I want people watching this to know this is not a discussion for Coca-Cola only, okay? This is the discussion for everybody that's even thinking about starting the process. And to that point, I have to bring this up, but I hate to. You deal with the federal and, dealing with the government. Okay, we'll end it there. But no, you deal with the federal trademark office and the applications. It's got to be tough. But what can you share with the viewers and the benefit for registering and dealing with the trademark office and why they should file?
Sure. And actually, I get this question a lot because I think there's a lot of buzz around, okay, do you have a trademark? Have you registered your trademark? But it's important for folks to understand what that means and why it's important. And that really starts with, making sure your brand. So if you're coming up with a brand name, you want to make sure it's clear to use. You want to make sure there's not somebody in similar or identical goods and services using that same name. For a host of reasons. You want to have your own brand identity. You want to be known as, whatever brand you choose. You don't want, there to be somebody else in the space with the same name, but also you don't want to spend years or months developing a brand and putting in all that sweat equity only to come find out that there's somebody else in the space already using it and you have to start over. So clearing your mark or the name of your brand or any of your brand assets, your logo, slogan, things of that nature is of utmost importance. I mean, it is certainly heartbreaking when a client comes to us and says, hey, we've spent this past year doing this, we're ready to go. And then come to find out that that name is already taken on the US Patent and Trademark Office, or it's already in use in the United States. Because here in the United States, trademark rights derive from use in commerce. So you can have what we call common law rights solely by using your mark in commerce, but they're limited. Your rights are limited to your geographic area and a natural zone of expansion. So what does the federal registration do? It gives you that federal protection, and it gives you that presumption of validity, and it helps you enforce going forward. For example, if you wanted to enforce your rights, say on Amazon, having the registration helps because you're able to show that registration certificate. It also gives you peace of mind. If you go through that clearance process and you get an all clear and you're good to go, and then you get through the federal registration process, which is multiple steps, to get through. But then you get through that process, you have the peace of mind going forward, that you're protected, that your brand is clear to go, and then you can enforce it as you deem appropriate. So I think there's several benefits to it. And also keep in mind too, if there's ever, if you ever wanted to sell your brand or sell the assets, these are questions that purchasers typically, would ask. Do you have trademarks? Are you secure with your trademark registrations? So there's a number of key benefits to having the federal registration.
That's interesting, because, and I hadn't even thought about that. And I love these presentations of what you experts bring to the table, because it's a lot of stuff you're saying, I didn't think about that. And I'm thinking about a lot of stuff. And I imagine that there's somebody who's creating a candy bar in their house, and it's a cool candy bar, and they're like, oh, I'm just selling it to the local area. And then all of a sudden you find a way to get onto an Amazon type of platform. And now you're not just selling it to the local area. Now all of a sudden you're selling it nationally that you never thought about.
Right. And that's true. And so and with social media these days too, I mean, it's quicker. People are picking up on what you're putting out there as far as your name and, your brand. And so you wouldn't want to revert or switch, after all of a sudden people are recognizing your brand. So it's important to think about this in the very beginning. And believe me, I'm sure, and so do I, it's hard. In the beginning, when you're starting off, funds are limited. We know it's tricky to, allocate where do you want to put your money, but we feel that investing some in your brand at the outset, it pays off in dividends in the long run, because you'll save the headache of, hopefully save the headache of, dealing with, enforcement or getting that, dreaded cease and desist letter. But it's important to consult a professional. And, of course, as we're talking today, this is all very general advice, but brands should certainly consult their professional and consult someone when they're looking to, start a brand or clear a brand, or if they have questions about this process.
Great. So are there any particular trends that you're seeing in the trademark office that people should be aware of?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's been a lot of activity in the trademark office lately, but one overarching, I'd say, theme that I see a lot, and I do some presentations in other organizations, and I often get questions related to, okay, I looked it up on, I looked my name up on the US Patent and Trademark Office. It's a public website. You can do a search, and my name is not there for this particular product. And I always just caution folks, just be careful with that, because that's step one. My clearance process involves not only looking for, the identical name for identical goods and services, but what you have to keep in mind is related goods and services. And the trademark office has certainly, been trending and even expanding to a certain extent what is deemed related as far as the goods and services. So, for example, if you are a beer manufacturer, you would want to look not just at beer, but wine, other alcohol, perhaps even other light beverages, or maybe bar restaurant services, where goods could be sold together, where a consumer might think they originate from the same source. And sometimes those steps are overlooked. So again, important to consult a professional on that, because with the trademark office deeming, certain goods and services related that maybe even be unexpected. For example, there was an opinion where cigars and beer were deemed to be related because they could, I guess, emanate from the same source. So you just have to be careful with that. And I would always caution folks to keep in mind, that you need to consider not just identical products, but also ones that are that could be deemed related. So it's important step not to overlook.
So, I mean, the direction that the trademark office is moving in, I mean, should brands do anything to adapt, or just, because I know a lot of people are going to sit and think they could do this on their own, and you can't. Okay, I want to make sure that they know that you can't. Should they be doing anything particular to adapt, do you think?
Well, I mean, I think, certainly if they're expanding in other product lines, it's important. And it's interesting too, so even in, beer and liquor and some of those categories, you're seeing the growth of, other canned type beverages, right? These seltzers and ready to drink cocktails, product lines are constantly expanding in food and beverage. It's remarkable what's been produced and what's coming out in this space. So I just think when, recognizing that, you should really, if you're expanding your product line, or maybe you're going into something a little bit different, you want to check with your professional, with, an attorney or someone who's assisting with you with your brand development, just to see, to make sure, to check the trademark office and what else might be out there as far as relatedness, at least on that front, with respect to, what we were discussing about relatedness of goods and services. So I do think it's important when you're, as you're adapting and as you're maybe modifying product lines, or maybe you're doing something a little bit different, just keep that in mind, and check to make sure, that next expansion route you're taking is clear to go.
So, I mean, as you mentioned, you opened up with saying, this past 18 months, and it's been crazy. And I don't know what's considered a recent development anymore. Is it recent development pre-March of 2020, or is it during these past 18 months, or is it just August of 21? Since we're in September. But are there any recent developments that you can share with listeners that they should really focus on?
Sure. Well, I will say this, and this has been remarkable too. And I think it goes back to your first comment about maybe people are sitting thinking, what can I start now? Can I start my side business? I want to think about my brand now. But the trademark office has seen incredible demand and an uptick recently with applications. Even the trademark office website even notes that it's experiencing unprecedented surge in new applications over the past year. And this has resulted consequently in, a surge in, people responding to the trademark office and, all other filings that are related to your trademark. So, what does this mean? Well, historically, I've been able to tell clients once we file an application, it'll generally be reviewed by a trademark examiner within, 3 months. Typically was what it was, about 3 or 4 months. But now we're looking at even up to 6 months before a trademark will be reviewed. Right. And, what does that mean? Well, what this means for a new brand is you're going to now wait that 6 months to even get a response from the trademark office, because they are so inundated right now and they're trying to get through this, this backlog. But what it means for a brand owner is that that's a longer time to wait to know if your brand's clear. It could result in a risk in launching or expanding your product lines, as well as enforcement. So, we're trying to tell our clients, let's get ahead of it. Let's, as soon as you're ready to, or you think you have an intent to use a particular name, let's file as quickly as we can. But most importantly, it all goes back to that clearance step that I spoke, about earlier, and that if you, spend the time to clear it, it gives you that peace of mind. So at least, while your mark's pending, you can at least have some comfort, hopefully that, your mark is good to go. So it's all related, but, it is causing an issue with, the smaller brands and other brands too, or who would just want to expand and launch their product. It's just taking a little bit longer to find out if there's going to be an issue with getting that federal registration.
You must have read my mind, because I literally wrote down how long. That was what I wrote down. As it relates to the time frame,
Sure.
And the time frame that you gave, that's your estimate now. Tomorrow could change. It could go back shorter, it could go back longer. So people just have to be aware. And it could be problems with applications, I'm sure. Is any particular industry take longer than others, or is that pretty much universal? That's the staffing that they have.
Yeah, I haven't noticed any real difference among, and as you mentioned, I mean, I do, focus quite a bit on food and beverage. I am passionate about the industry, but I service a variety of different industries. And I haven't noticed any difference in industry with respect to review. It's more, it's just, I think as they come in, they're getting to it. And it has, just been taking a bit longer. There's been a lot of trademarks in the past year and a half that have been filed.
Okay, I appreciate that information. Those are the questions I have. I really want to thank you for presenting today. I mean, besides the fact of the information that you brought up about smaller companies, you said one thing in particular. I want to thank you for what you said. You know, the branding, everything's branding of, you know, what Sally Glick in our office puts on our marketing material. Everybody knows Sally, but it's evolved so much with the Facebook, Instagram,
Sure.
wherever you go out there and you get known based on you're just on your site alone, you're spending that time. And to your point, that could all have to change. And now everything you put into that, don't waste the time and effort. So I recommend all the listeners, if you don't have your branding memorialized in some way, you should really talk with somebody like Danielle to try and figure out what you need to do. Protect yourself, you know, talk to her. And also the thing I appreciate you saying, Danielle, is talk to me now. You don't want to be talked to me during litigation. It's pretty much what you're saying. That's not the fun time.
Right. We like helping our clients expand and grow and watch them develop on it. And yes, I mean, look, it may happen. Sometimes litigation is inevitable and you never know what might happen down the road. But yes, we try to consider ourselves risk managers, right? We try to mitigate the risk as much as we possibly can at the outset. And this is a good step in that process.
Great. I want to thank you again for presenting, and thank everybody else for listening. And
thank you.
I appreciate your information, and we'll be reaching out to you again for other intellectual property discussions. So thank you.
Appreciate it. Bye-bye.